the most exceptional asset on the planet. So what are we actually mining? So you would have seen this diagram before. It's our trilobate kimberlite. So in the north lobe, the one on the your left, that's where we started mining. Odd enough is where we're mining now, and I'll touch on why we're doing that. And really the story, which I've told here a couple of times now, started in February, March last year when we actually started mining into the center and the south lobe. That's really when we started to see a significant increase in the overall value of the diamond. And that's attributed to the recovery of the large stones. And unfortunately, I have a new replica of the 203K stone. I forgot to bring it because we hand that out, and I'm sure that people will go, well, this is real, I'm leaving now. But $8.2 million for that stone. I think we got a picture of it a little bit later. But it's really that which has actually driven the success of Lucara. And I think when we start to talk about the value that the large diamonds add, where we started the year with $150, $160 million revenue forecast, specifically because of the large stones, but not only because of the large stones, but because of how many we are producing, specifically when we're mining in the south lobe. So, and oddly enough, the south lobe, that's the big piece. So 72% of the material that we mine between now and the end of the life of mine, the end of the open pit in 2026 is coming out of the area which produces far more large stones than we actually have even in our resource update, which we put out at the beginning of the year, and I'll touch on those ones. So essentially, it looks quite good. So the diagram is, this down here would be our north lobe, the smaller section. The section you can see cut out there, that is the sump. So we're heading into the rainy season. Unlike you guys here, apparently sort of 2.5 hours of sunshine so far in November, whereas in Botswana, we're hoping for 2.5 days of rain. That would be good. So beautiful sunshine, I've actually cut that out. So we got the north lobe down here. This section here is the center lobe, and then the big section at the back there being the south lobe. As we now have mined deep, and you can see we're about 4 benches, if you count those down there, 3 or 4 benches deep in the south lobe. So we've only really scratched the surface. So we've taken the weathered material, which is easy to process through the plant. But as we get deeper, we actually get back into, I'm going to jump, sorry, into that purple section, which is our fresh material. So a lot of people say to me, well, how do you know that the large stones are going to actually be in the large material as well? And it's because of the overall continuity of the kimberlite. So your geophysics, your mantle material, your abundance of kimberlite indicator, the geochemistry, everything is identical in the weathered material to what we see in the hard rock. The hard rock, however, is your original mantle material. So from 200 plus kilometers down, when the kimberlite was actually in place, it's just a volcano about 90 million years ago, it actually still contains the primary building blocks that you'd find in the earth, sort of way down there. So very heavy materials, magnetites, hematites, original sort of olivine. So when we start to put that through the process plant, the plant just doesn't like it. It's very dense, and that's why we're doing the plant optimization, so we can actually continue to process at 2.5 million tons that material there. So as we finish the plant optimization, we're processing, as I mentioned, material mostly from the north lobe. That stuff is very easy to process, but again, the north lobe is not a huge producer of large stones. Yes, we do get 1 or 2 decent stones out of it, but we're not going to have the large stones in abundance. And I think the market will most probably get a little bit concerned when we put out our numbers at this quarter and the first quarter, because they're not as high as what we've seen historically in terms of the number of plus 10.8 carats. But it's just because we're not mining in those areas. One last thing. So when we look at the overall size, so if you sort of the entire outside, so I can't actually touch the top there, when the pit actually hits 324 meters, it's about 1.1 kilometers across. So it is, for a diamond mine, a fairly large hole. But I think if we look at the revenue which we're extracting from there, we're going to run most probably anywhere up to between $3 and $4 billion by the time we finish mining it. So talking about those diamond values, based on the sampling of the diamonds which we sold last year, 19th of December last year and the 3rd of February this year, we put out the updated resource statement and then our new technical report, which spoke really around the change in the size distribution. So the actual size of the diamonds which we expect to recover. And because of that change, once you actually start to recover larger stones, the exponential value which you see from those larger stones translates into those 2 numbers which you see. Where we originally had for the center lobe, $276 a carat, that's what we were expecting. We're now getting sort of in excess of $350. And for the south lobe, $231 and sort of based on the numbers which we saw from the diamonds we sold from the South Lobe last year, we were expecting around about 430. So if you actually average those numbers out, you can throw the North Lobe runs at about 244 because it's a finer distribution. But if you average those out, we're most probably looking at most probably 320 odd dollars per carat. The North Lobe is quite a bit lower. So let's assume that we're doing 400,000 carats at $320 a carat. That's going to give you around about sort of $140 million. Actually 120 to $130 million. If you then look at what the large stones add, this year alone we've only sold 50 diamonds in our large stone tenders, $136 million. So if we add that onto the 120, it's right bang in line with where we're going. In terms of the overall value that we'll sell this year of between 240, 250 plus million dollars this year. So again, it comes down to when we look at those numbers, there's a good chance that if you average it out, the large stones are in addition to that. And you can actually see it in the number, I was going to run and jump, but I'm just probably break something, where we talk about the Q3 sales. So far for the diamonds which we've sold to the end of the third quarter, we've actually averaged $630 plus a carat. Interestingly enough, that doesn't take into consideration the third large stone tender. So the 14 diamonds which we sold in October for $46 million. If you actually add that into the number is over $730 a carat. So the numbers which we actually have in the resource statement, very, very conservative. But they're conservative because nobody's really willing to predict when you're going to recover a gem quality 100 carat stone. Oh, sorry. And again, you've most probably seen this diagram quite often. There are people, and oddly enough, a lot of people within De Beers. De Beers sort of don't really want to speak to us, maybe because they sold us the asset, and I think whenever you sort of somebody does something sort of far better than what you had expected, there seems to be a bit of a distance. But the guys at De Beers keep telling us the large stones will sort of stop as soon as you get into the hard material. And we're down, hard material starts about here. Every single one of these little blocks is a large stone, most of them gem quality stones except for these two, those are there for a reason. But as we've gotten down, this is a great one. In that area there, I think there were 6 stones. Those 6 stones most probably worth about 12 or $13 million. These two, the reason why the 281 and the 118 is there, is again to sort of talk about what we're doing in the plant upgrade. As part of that upgrade, we're installing a large diamond recovery. Actually, we've already kind of temporarily put it into the circuit, just in case there is a large stone, because we don't want to break it. Those 2 stones, if I gave them to you, actually it took our VP exploration, he's pretty good at puzzles. It actually took him half an hour to fit these things together. But it's a 500 plus carat stone, the original stone. It's fortunately a rejection, so it's all black. It's worth maybe $20,000. But it indicates that the resource has the potential to produce plus 500 carat stones. And it's the reason why we're actually putting in a large diamond recovery system. Now, 500 carat stone, the last decent one to be sold was sold by Petra, 503 carats, $35.5 million. So when we now start to look at where the value lies, we want to make sure that the system we're putting in might cost $8 or $10 million just for the large diamond recovery. It only takes 1 stone, and that entire system is paid for. So again, we want to put things in place which we can actually control. And in terms of maximizing revenue, that's really where the focus is for the plant upgrade. So onto the numbers, there's a lot of information here. The most important things that I wanted to point out was, I mentioned we're selling diamonds $634 a carat. Our cost per carat currently sitting at $123, so awesome margin. We're doing $500 plus per carat, and we're selling 400,000 carats plus this year. Not enough. I've already mentioned the 634 is a kind of a conservative number, because if you include the large stone tender, we're now sitting over $700 a carat for those numbers. And then all the way on the far side, actually, that one. That's the big important number. It actually shows you sort of what's actually happened with our cash balance. So from where we were in Q3 last year at $33 million, we're now sitting with over $133 million in the bank. Now, you have to remember, what have we actually paid out? It's most probably about 25. Yeah, confirmation. About $25 million already been paid out in the $55 million we're spending on the capital program. Dividend came out of that. This year alone, we're going to pay out about $27 million in dividends. And with all of that being said and done, we'll most probably spend about between $40 and $45 million this year out of the 55 on the plant upgrade, we're still going to end the year with north of $100 million in the bank. So again, just demonstrating the ability for the resource to generate a significant amount of cash. And I know that the question will come later on, what are we going to do with the cash? And my gut answer is not waste it. I think there are diamond companies, actually there's mining companies, there's a lot of diamond companies as well, that if you do have a resource which has the ability to generate cash the same as what this one does, the pressure from on management to do something with it starts to become almost like a burden. And what they do is they go out and they run out and they buy the first thing that comes to mind. And generally it's a massive sort of value reduction exercise. So what we are going through, and we do it sort of on a very regular basis, is making sure we understand what's happening in the market so that we can make best use and make sure it's value accretive when we do actually find something to use our cash. So if we look at the overall sales update, to the end of Q3, we've sold more than 307,000 carats worth of diamonds. And the total revenue generated from those, $195 million. Again, as I mentioned, it doesn't include the revenue which we got from the third large stone tender, so $46 million. So you add that up, we're sitting already north of 240. So hey, we could have just shut everything down, gone for an extended vacation. We've already made our target. We're between 240 and 250, but that doesn't work like that. So we still have 2 regular tenders. One of them has already been concluded. Last one happens the 11th of December. We're selling on average between 52, 55,000 carats per tender. So you add that onto the 307 and we'll come within our target of between 400, 420,000 carats sold. So it doesn't take much, even if we averaged $150 a carat for those. And remember, it is North Lobe goods, so there's not some sort of large stones in there. We'll save those for next year. It doesn't take much to see that actually we will exceed the top end of our revenue guidance at $250 million. So if you looked at our progression, if you took an annualized revenue, which we would have had from 2012, had we actually had a full year, we would have sold about $108, $110 million worth of diamonds. The following year, 180, and this year we're going to top 250. And I think if you plotted those numbers across our share price, they should be fairly linear. Other information in there says so far 565 diamonds to the end of Q3, larger than 10.8. Over the last 20 months, more than 50, or no, it was 90. There was 98 carats this morning, ugly as sin, so not a nice stone. But if that was north of 100, we would have had more than 55 diamonds larger than 100 carats. And when I say that, a lot of people will go, actually I think most people go, well, what does that mean? So if we look at Lucara's production, 420,000 carats a year. Based on the graph where I started talking about the market, it's around about 0.38% of global production. It's a drop in the ocean. In terms of 100 carat stones, we're currently producing between 40 and 50% of the total world supply of large exceptional stones. And that's why, again, sort of with a certain level of bias, when I say that we are actually mining most probably the most spectacular resource on the planet, that's the reason why. What people also need to understand is when I say that we're recovering X number of plus 100 carat stones, but 10.8 is the bottom cutoff, that's way down here. How many diamonds are we actually recovering between 10.8 and 100? And that's why we put that 565 in there. Not all of those will be nice, beautiful stones, but there's a significant amount of revenue that gets generated from those. And that's why we see the increase from where we originally had the resource at 276 average dollars per carat for the center, and whatever it was 243 for the south, up to the 351 and the 413, which we see now. So, I've already spoken about this 3 times, but hey, I'll do it again. So our large stone tenders, the brochures which we put out, are slowly becoming a very sought after